Hi guys, how's it going? I just stopped Torin because we are gonna do. Hi, this is another QQ. We're discussing.
Kill Your Darlings.
Thank you very much. Kill Your Darlings. Torin was just gonna explain to me something that I would rather us record and have a discussion about. But again, this is Kill Your Darlings. This is gonna discussion. We're gonna just spoil everything. So please stop. Go. Watch the film if you haven't seen it, or if you're not sure you want to watch it, go see our review to see why you should, because you should. Other than that, very brief synopsis of our review. I gave it an A minus. He gave it a B. I gave it an A minus. He gave it a B minus. And I want to ask him. I thought we had the same sort of feelings about the film, and I had it sort of pinned roughly. I thought he was gonna give it like a B plus.
It's not such a divisive thing for you to give it an A minus and me to give it a B minus, right?
Yeah, I think so.
In all the history of Western society, this is not the most divisive.
Yeah, but you know we're but for a YouTube channel that talks about film, I want to sort of.
Of course, yeah.
Like I want to see what your.
That's our deal.
What your sort of reasoning was, and I thought you bring up some interesting points, but
okay.
Anyways, so why?
Well, what I was saying before you said, "Wait a second, I'm going to record this because we should be recording this," was like, if I had to say like my rating scale generally, if I've seen maybe 500 movies in my life, you know, maybe that's a conservative estimate, but I think that's quite a bit. That's probably more movies than I've seen. If I've seen 500. How many should justifiably be A's? And I'd have to say, well, like putting a limiting factor on it of maybe like 10% or something like that. So let's say 50 movies out of all the movies I've seen can be A's. This one probably doesn't get there. You know, I've probably, well, that's a toss-up maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's just because of my lack of knowledge. Anyway, what I'm saying is at about 10% for my A bracket, this movie doesn't get to the top 10% of the movies that I've seen. And I think that's like a fairer estimate. You know?
Okay, so then what's B minus? That's like for me, and I think it's probably wrong, is like my like top 50% would be like a B minus, right? And I feel like this film does, like we just watched a film that I think hits probably the 50% mark with A Most Violent Year, and this film, I think it has. I know you said like the performances weren't revolutionary, but I thought there was consistently some really strong moments, and there were good performances across the board. Like it wasn't just one or two actors. Like it was
for sure not revolutionary though.
Right. So, like, I'm
Sorry, I just took the window to your sales there.
Yeah, no. I do think this has. I think this deserves to be in a lot top, like. 40-30%, right? So where is B minus for you? Is it the top 30%? Because I would not want to be
top 30%. Yeah.
Really? Holy.
I don't know. Maybe it is like really what?
Well, no. I guess like if a film is a C, I'm probably trying not to turn off the screen. Right? Like a film has to be at least like a C plus in order for me to keep watching it. And I have, because like I only have so much time in my life, and I understand the value of watching a poor movie, but like, you know, like a crappy student film is like a C minus, maybe a D. Like a bad student film is like a D, right? So like there's, yeah, like I find like, where do you put. Like, what's a film that's in your, like okay, top 70%?
This is a tangled web, man. Okay, here's an argument that I had with a friend. He was like, Radio is a great movie. And I said, Radio's, like, pretty good. And he was like, no, it's a great movie. And I was like, no, man, like, Last Samurai is the best movie ever made.
So what's the best movie?
The Last Samurai is the best movie that will ever be made and has ever been made, obviously. Radio's no Last Samurai. It's not even half. You haven't seen The Last Samurai?
I thought you said Sunrise. Holy crap! These headphones. Anyways, The Last Samurai is the best movie ever made. No, I've not seen it. But continue.
Anyway, that's my all-time favorite movie because it is the best movie ever made.
Yeah.
I don't, my decisions are just arbitrary. This is an absolute. Anyway, a B minus. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with a B minus. I don't know. There are only. Okay, let's say beyond a C. Like that's top 30% of all the movies that I've seen is probably like a C. You know. Really? So everything that I give a ranking to above that is better than like will be in the best 3 out of 7 movies that I see.
Really?
I don't know. Maybe it's
like that, but
anyway, this is a stupid thing to get hung up about.
No, I think it's interesting. Like, and I think like us being a channel that talks about, you know, analyzing film and like trying to discern whether a film is good or not. I think this has value. Talking about it, right?
Probably has value if I had worked it out before. But I don't even know what I feel. I just know that I don't think I liked it as much as you, and I would not put it up on the same. Like to me, There Will Be Blood is an A+ film. You know?
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't touch at the A range if There Will Be Blood is an A+ film.
Interesting. I guess for me, with the grades, it just becomes extremely steep. Like there are going to be a good number of A minuses, not a big group, but a decent. Like I may have overreached a little bit with that, but I'm a sucker for good performances. So like that's a fault of mine, and I know it. So there's a decent number of A minuses, and then there's like fewer A's, and then there's almost like no A pluses. Like an A+ film for me is Mongolia. Like Nolia, sorry. Right? Like,
yeah, I know what you meant actually. Yeah.
Yeah, right? So because like Mongol is another film which apparently is good, but like that's another thing, right? So Magnolia is an A+, right? And there's probably like maybe 10 A pluses, right? So I just find this really interesting. So anyways, with all that, you know, sort of banter back and forth, why don't we get a little bit more into the actual film itself?
Yeah.
What stops it from being a B or B+ for you? Like what was sort of something that knocked it down a few pegs? Because I do think it has a few elements that could have elevated it to at least like a B+, maybe A- level for you in terms of like performance and stuff like that. So what were some of the things that stopped it?
One thing that I don't mind that they did because it made the film strong is they made the whole social milieu of the like, and I did go ye instead of you, because English people have pig tongues. Anyway, they got the feel, the cultural feel, or the feel of the cultural moment, I think, pretty well, but they didn't give many particulars.
Is that a good or bad thing?
And I think that was, like, I could have used more. They did that, I think, in order to focus on the intense, intimate social dynamics of this small group of friends and artists, or who have yet to be friends and artists. And I don't mind that they did that, because there are other films, there are documentaries, there are histories, biographies, and so much writing to do with the Beat Generation that tells us what they did as an art movement and tells us about like the surrounding social context, and we probably come to that movie, even you who don't know much about English lit history at all,
unlike you who's a English lit graduate, right?
Yeah, right, which is embarrassing because I don't know, I was never a terrible fan of the Beats, which is a sort of a heinous thing to say today because there are many cultural connotations that they embody that have lived on, or I don't know, many cultural ideals that succeeded that have become part of the culture. Anyway,
so aside from derailing,
I think it was a little too like Hollywood romance for me. in the relationship between Dan Radcliffe and Dane DeHaan. I think that was probably a unique angle to take in light of the story. It had to do.
What is Hollywood for you? Like what particular moments? Because that's for me. That's why I want to do this QQ stuff, right? Is to like actually kind of dig into that sort of thing. Like what is Hollywood for you? Is it the like particular lines? Like
I don't know, man. Like he immediately attracts Daniel Radcliffe. Lucian Carr immediately attracts Ginsberg. And then he is ambivalent towards him. It seems like he's encouraging his affection and that he wants to repay it. Then a climax comes, they kiss, and it's like he's ruined it for him. And I felt like that was all a little sad, and like I expected the relationship to take that arc. There are many clues. Like I don't think that this one obviously starts out with the most dramatic moment having already happened. It's the first thing you see on screen is Lucian Carr standing there with David Camerer's body. He's drowning him, right? And the whole motif of like recurrence and rebirth, and the end is the beginning is the end, sort of thing, has to do with the art movement. It also describes the social relationships in a way, and I think that thematically, like, that's cool. It just, like, I don't know, they could have made it a little more eccentric and a little more weird to hook me, and the like rules of their engagement,
like, weird how?
Could have been,
like,
I don't know.
Like, that's...
I wanted it to, like, have you seen Naked Lunch, which is the film about William Burroughs' novel Naked Lunch? It's totally weird. It's totally out there, and I think filmically they do things that are really off-putting and deranging, and that sort of describes the art in the book. At least it translates well to film. It's probably a slag or a struggle for some people to get through that movie, but I really enjoyed it. This movie didn't get that weird. It was all like highly digestible, you know. And I think for the art movement that it was supposed to describe, that's unacceptable.
So I guess what you're...
It shows them being like, you know, sort of party boys and like people we can all admire for their anti-authoritarian and iconoclastic ideals. And yeah, you speak up in class and you've got a good reason because you're intellectual about it and that sort of thing. But these guys were probably stumbling idiots half the time that they were coming up with these revolutionary ideas. You know, I don't want to slander them or anything, but I don't know. It just was a little less human to me than it should have been.
So I guess what you're saying is, like, I'm just trying to be able to sort of regurgitate. You're saying like they made it more digestible at the cost of what you think it was. What it was more like they didn't offer sort of the more sort of, or like the uglier truths, or sort of the less romanticized. Like they made it. They made it more romanticized and more digestible, but they basically they made it prettier than probably what it was.
Yeah, like let's for example take the drug use thing, which is like the drug use during the time, I think in the wider culture at least, was like more prevalent in America in the 60s. You had all sorts of people taking drugs for different reasons, a lot of them to be anti-government or anti-authoritarian or whatever, and like seeking truth elsewhere. And breaking out of like family life and that sort of thing. So anyway, but the Beats were very famous for taking all sorts of different types of drugs to derange the senses, as William Burroughs says, you know, to open up a wider path for art and to let life into the writing and that sort of thing in ways that were unexpected, and they were sort of vessels for it, you know.
Yeah,
but I think that the way that the drug use was portrayed was all pretty glitzy and glamorous and that sort of thing. And what Howl is about is like, yeah.
Can you explain what Howl is quickly for those people?
Yeah, it's Allen Ginsberg's most famous poem about sort of the underworld that he was a part of. Deals with homosexuality and drug use and like street living and also like the privilege of being able to go away from that street living at times and like having these respites at wealthy New York apartments and that sort of thing. Anyway, it's like his weird eclectic social engagements and his reflections on why people felt the need to destroy themselves with drugs and destroy their psyches and rip themselves apart to try and find truth. And like there's a little bit of negativity associated with the drug use in the film, but I think for the most part it's all about the excitement and the inspiration and the verve that it gives them in their writing. And it doesn't give us enough of the fallout. The fallout is more negotiated through like the emotional distance and like the falling out between the two characters, Lucian Carr and Allen Ginsberg. And I think that they could have done a better job describing the social context in its entirety, or like at least getting at that a little more than this like, you know, very close up face-to-face relationship.
But yeah, it's like it seems like they didn't really give us like sort of the train spotting aspect of like drug use.
There you go. Yeah,
like because like without spoiling Train Spotting, which is a fantastic film, you should go watch it. Like you get all the hyper and the excitable parts of drug use in Train Spotting, but you also see the really nasty shit of it too, right?
Or I don't see any shit.
But so I guess that's why I see what you're saying is like you saw all the pretty parts, but it's like seeing the highlight reel of someone's life, but not if like not the sort of like the day-to-day sort of less glamorous aspects of it, which when you're making a film like this, you would hope you would, you know, it's really easy to see sort of the glamorous parts, but I guess you want to see sort of the parts where they're less, when they're more vulnerable and more dirty, both, you know, physically and emotionally. Although
times... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I talked for a while. You go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I do think one of the film's strongest parts, which unfortunately is not sort of the focus of it, and it shouldn't be in terms of story structure, but it's just it was a very strong part, but it, you know, it didn't have that part. Anyways, I'll just fucking say it. Or excuse me, I will say it.
Yeah, you better just fucking say it.
Yeah. Is the relationship between Lucian and David, right? Like, I do feel like I saw... They did a very good job of making me feel sort of like Alan, at least with in terms of his perspective, where even though I didn't see it, I could tell that there were some really nasty things I didn't see, right? And as this gets more and more revealed, like how Lucian tries to commit suicide and all these different stuff, and I feel I kind of just look back on it, like with the kids, the main characters like strangling themselves. Like there were moments where I feel like, yeah, now that I think about it, the film could have gone a little bit, pushed it a little bit further, because like with that scene where they're choking themselves, like, oh holy shit, like they kicked the chairs underneath themselves by accident, they're choking, and they could have theoretically actually died, but they didn't, and the last moment we see is them laughing like ha ha ha, and then that sort of thing, right? When, you know, if we want to give sort of a more, you know, a less glamorous side of it, they could have shown, you know, the actual damage that they could have done to themselves, or, you know, say with all this crap that they're doing, the other damage they're doing to other people, because they don't notice that, right? Yeah. So yeah, I do think you make a very good point about that.
Like, yeah, like there's a huge emotional bomb that goes off in the first little while with Allen Ginsberg. His mom gets, like, he leaves his mom, and it's obvious that he is her sole support in the world, sort of thing, that his father is not there emotionally for her. And yeah, she comes back at the end of the film, but they don't, like, she's on his mind, and he doesn't go to visit her the one night, which she obviously has an episode, and then her dad says that's it, or his dad says that's it, she's going away. And I just didn't care, I think, as much as I should have about that relationship, because I knew that Alan had much more exciting things to deal with, and that sort of, and his guilt, you know, was just sort of perfunctory. I didn't feel his being ripped up about it as much as I should have. You know, there wasn't enough time given to things like that. I think maybe in that regard the movie went for too much sometimes, because you've got that very intimate, important relationship that gets narrated in all of like 2 minutes, maybe the whole part until they're reunited at the end, and she's a whole woman again somehow.
Which anyway, I thought was a little strange. Like exactly. Oh yeah, I mean, you go into a mental hospital, and oh yeah, you're healed, right? Which I thought. But anyways, continue.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who knows someone with like
mental illness and stuff like
with
that.
mental illness like that knows that those are very dangerous words to hear from their mouths. Is like, I'm okay now. You know?
Like, you're like, yeah.
There's always the seed of suspicion, yeah, for sure. Anyway, but that was a little too easy and too quick for me. I see its utility in the narrative, and I think that because of the potential it showed, I enjoyed that it was there. But I think it left me dissatisfied, because it probably should have been given more attention. But then what else would you have to leave out? I mean, this film was only 1 hour and 45 minutes. A lot of it moves very fast. I don't know how else they might have balanced those sort of slower emotional moments and given them the attention they need over more time, and with the rest of this like hyped up frenzied narrative and the drug use and that sort of thing. I don't know.
Well, I think, and this is part of it, is like why like A films and A+ films are what they are, is because somehow they find a way to input like 6, 7, 8 layers of information in one line, one moment, that sort of thing, where like, okay, in an ideal sort of like A+ movie moment, we'd be like, okay, I get that, Daniel Radcliffe feels something for his mother, we understand more about his character, we understand his more fears. We understand how Lucian feels about him, and we also feel how Lucian feels about another character, and it all happens in one moment, right? In a span of about 5 seconds. Like that's, and an A to A plus film has like multiple of those, up into like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 of those kind of moments, so that this can somehow feel that full. And maybe I got caught up in sort of the emotional ride, which I do think I'm actually quite susceptible to. Like, I love good acting moments, and I sometimes I think get clouded by that, which is obviously something as an aspiring film director I'm working on, right? But yeah, like if we were tasked at like, okay, make this an A film, like how would we have fit those moments in? I can't. Like, it would be very, very difficult, because I do think they shoved a good chunk of information, and it was engaging as well. It's just somehow, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like the way that these moments were dispersed throughout the film seems to me to have given, like, everything seems to have been timed really well with the rest of the movie. Like Jack Kerouac, his friend who is abroad, who's in the Navy, I think, or is at least fighting in the trenches, is sent to the front and that sort of thing, and sends him these 45s, or I don't know if they're, maybe they're 45s. Anyway, sends him records, recordings, just to say, hey, here's what's going on in the war, you know, miss you, buddy. And then he dies, and you hear him reciting an ode.
You okay, bud? You want a glass of water?
Okay. You hear him reciting an ode to Shelley, and the recording cuts off, and he's dead. I mean, that's what these people were dealing with, and in large part, that's what their art was responding to, was this disillusionment in American culture and generally the world over, like depressed people, because war is ripping life apart, right? And so there's that aspect, which, yes, it's a good moment with Jack Kerouac and Edie. But I don't know, that one also went really quickly too. It was emotional. I think it was difficult, because these characters all could have been given so much more attention, and they could have sustained a film on their own. Obviously, On the Road has its own film too, which I guess the actor who plays Jack Kerouac in this film plays Kerouac in On the Road too. I think my girlfriend was saying that. Anyway, I didn't find anything bad with the way the scenes were edited and acted. Maybe it was just that there was too much, I'm starting to think. I don't know. I'm just going to keep saying that, probably.
Yeah.
Say something
else. Like, this is the part where, like, we admit that we are not experts in anything. Like, we are, like, young guys trying to understand and learn how storytelling in general, and like film in particular, how it works, and how we would able to sort of make that work. And like, you keep saying, like, maybe there's too much, but I'm just wondering if, like, information wasn't stacked high enough in those particular moments, right? I think the one that you're talking about does do a good job, and it does fill a good amount of, like, space. It gives us another color, tone, that sort of thing. But, or maybe it's just like, it was, we thought, executed fairly well, but in order to be a truly great film, it just needed to be executed better, right?
Yeah.
Because it can always, something can always be good, but just, like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
I think that's where I'm at with this one, man.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think there's a lot, like, the director is openly gay, says I'm a gay director, and directs with the theme of gay men in America on his mind, and Allen Ginsberg obviously has homosexual relationships with men outside this group, but also, that we're supposed to believe inside the group. And how do you feel like they narrated that, like the intimacy of Lucian Carr, and then the non-intimacy of Lucian Carr, and his struggle, I guess, maybe coming to terms with his own homosexuality? Do you think that they did a good job? Because I think they did a pretty good job with his ambiguity and his, like, using his non-knowledge of himself, or maybe his inability or frustration with that part of himself, but with expressing that part of himself. I think that is actually a point of power over Ginsberg, or at least it becomes de facto something that is hidden and ultimately hurts Ginsberg because it's in the dark,
Well, I think with the characters, one of my favorite sort of storytelling quotes or like rules or whatever they tell you is like David Mamet said, "There's only one rule to storytelling." Like I'm not saying it properly, but it's like the only one rule to storytelling. It's never be boring. And I felt like for the most part I wasn't bored. And they also mention, in sort of those kind of quotes, is like ultimately it just makes me care. And I cared about these characters. I cared about even the sub-characters, and maybe that's what I got too hung up on. But I thought I did a really good job of, like, I never thought that the film was like, oh, now this is the part where Lucian Carr is going to be homophobic, or, like, deny the fact he's gay, or that sort of stuff. Like, and it never sort of made this whole big thing about, like, oh, holy moly, I'm sure a lot of people who are aware of some of the Beats generation, like, they know that Allen Ginsberg is gay, but, like, I didn't. But didn't make it a huge deal. It was just sort of like that happened to be his sexual orientation, and it was less about the struggle of, like, ooh, no, I'm gay, but more like, does this guy like me and love me? Like, right? It was much more of a thing that I think everyone could relate to, is like, does this person over here, who I sort of put on the pedestal, do I care about, do they care about me, right? And I thought they did that. I thought that was a very strong point to it, right? And that's the audience didn't get hung up on the fact he's gay, because who cares? Like, I really, like, in a social historical context, yes, being gay was terrible, and I don't know much about it, but I mean, on a sort of story narrative level, like, on a resonating level, all we really care about is, like, I understand how that person feels, and on a level, one person loves another and wants to be with them. And I thought they did a very good job of sort of throwing away anything that might kind of distract us and make us focus on sort of what was really important, right? In terms of Lucian Carr and sort of depicting his struggle with his own sexual orientation and, like, just all that sort of stuff, I thought they did it rather elegantly. Maybe, like, I've read reviews that have said completely the opposite, but it seems that on QQ, you and I are making the point to disagree with most of the stuff that we're reading.
Yeah, I guess so. Because this movie got a 6.5 on IMDb, and I think it deserves more than that. I thought it was a pretty good film. Yeah,
Most Violent Year that we just did got higher reviews than we thought was sort of deserved. But anyways, going on back into my point about Lucian Carr's sort of, like, in depicting his struggles, internal struggles, they never say, they used actions and sort of Dane DeHaan's acting to sort of, and, like, his sort of facial features, which you talked about while we were recording.
Right, he's a pretty looking boy, He's sort of got androgynous features and, like, classical sort of British schoolboy good looks that are, youthful and Aryan.
Yeah, right.
So he's like all that would be attractive to, like, a prep school boy, I guess.
Right.
Being a prep school boy.
And so I believed the struggles were genuine, and I sympathized with Lucian. Like, I don't agree in almost any sense with most of the actions that he took, but I think it shows that it's good filmmaking, that I can sympathize and I can understand why a character would do what he did. Like, I understand, and and my heart aches knowing why he stabs Michael C. Hall's character, right? Like, that's good direction. It's good filmmaking, right? Because I could have easily just been like, this guy's a total dick, he's pretentious, I just don't care, right? I just don't care of him, but I do, right? And he does all sorts of despicable things. He steals things, he yells at people, he gets dropped from, like, so many schools, and yet I still I still watch them.
I mean, that's part of what's attractive about the Beats in general, right? There are anti-authoritarian attitude and all that, and like locking the cops in the study hall when they've just replaced Hamlet with a picture of dicks sort of thing, you know? And like, hey, look at these meddling kids and their dog, you know.
The ones, I'll say the one moment where I sort of had a very strong sense of resonance with a character, or maybe not resonance, but just I felt for that character, was when Michael C. Hall just says to Lucian, when he spins him around and has that knife, and he says, like, I understand why you wanted to kill yourself now. Or I understand how you feel.
Like when you wanted to die, yeah.
Right? And then he said, like, do it. But he didn't go all, like, Hollywood, like, do it! Like, kill me! Like,
I want you to hit me!
Right? That sort of thing. And I actually thought it was a very, sort of, a very well thought out character and director choice of just sort of, like, do it. And, like, when Lucian Carr kind of stagnates and hesitates, if the character really wants it to be done, they'll make it happen. And Michael C. Hall's character does. Like, he doesn't hang up on, like, yelling at him or anything. He just, like, does the whole, I was about to spoil something. But he basically just walks into the knife, right? He actually does what the character says that he wants, right? And I think that's often what happens with sort of performances that are not quite on key or fall flat or seem amiss, is that when the script and the story suggest a character wants something, but the director or the actor they don't quite figure it out, or like the action doesn't. So like if a character goes like, I hate you, but the actor doesn't leave the room or something, or like something of the like, where like,
I don't know, that's a pretty emotionally pitched moment if somebody says I hate you and then they stand in the same room together, you know?
Maybe, but like, and that
you would consider that as a director, man.
Yeah, it's, and like, I'm not using I'm not finding a good example, unfortunately, on the spot. But it's just, but yeah, like generally what happens with some direction that misses is just that they don't really find what the character wants, and I feel like in this film they do that fairly well. So it's just my long-winded way of saying, like, I think the directors and the actors really looked into the script and make sure, like, they say all sorts of stuff and they put on faces for everybody, but I think they found, more often than not, what the character actually genuinely wants. Which, if you are an actor and watching this, know how freaking hard it is to find that sometimes. But yeah, I was just curious, in terms of like film work and stuff, did you notice how the film used a lot of zooms?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, like a lot of, and more often than not, films tend to seem out of place or like jarring or something of like, but because it I think did a fairly good job of sort of placing itself in a very particular point of time, and make it felt like it was a time before us. Zooms are also seen as sort of a tool that is almost primitive, in a sense, or like
that's funny because Wes Anderson, like one of the staples of his film making and editing style is that long zoom that sort of focusing, like it's finding the frame as it's focusing in, which I find hilarious, and like The Office exploited to huge comic effect, right? The zoom in, the fourth wall thing. Yeah,
but like that's sort of, and like that's a very particular.
But it's only a joke now,
right? Yeah, like it's a joke, right? And like that's part of why it's funny in Wes Anderson and like hilarious in The Office and stuff, right? Is it has that sort of connotation. But with this film, what I thought was really interesting, there's a particular moment where I have written here, and it says, the very first part where like Alan and Lucian are in a room together, sort of like by themselves, and it says they get like really hot and romantic with the sexual tension, whatever, and Alan basically says like, "Oh, I'm not a writer yet," and then Lucian says, "Oh well, you're not anything yet." In those moments where they have like the most sort of locked in emotional moments, the film's zooming in. And I kind of like how this film was able to use that as to sort of be able to kind of further enforce the sense of like this film, it takes place before us, and it uses sort of the Zunes kind of noted history for that, but it's not seen as sort of corny or anything like that. You know what I mean? Because it could have seen as really bad or sort of out of place aesthetically. So I just thought that was kind of clever.
No,
also,
that's a good point.
Yeah. Oops. Also, I'm throwing pens around here. Something I also found quite interesting in terms of sound design. Other films do this, but it's just something that stood out for me that I quite liked. Is there are moments where it was pretty aggressive with its sound design in terms of like score and all that sort of stuff. Like in that same moment that I just described, the music and the score started to get a little bit more emotional and all that sort of stuff. And it started feeling like it started to build up to like certain crescendo or whatever. As soon as someone's like Alan or whatever on the like off screen, it cuts like right away. Like it goes like and it does this a number of times throughout the film with the score. But I didn't think it stood out necessarily. Like, did you notice that? Like the sound design suddenly cutting out, like have the score creeping in, and then just as quickly as it creeped in and sort of kind of
I didn't notice that much, though. I wasn't paying that much attention, I guess.
Well, yeah, and that's, I think, what I can compliment it on, is that I think the score did a really good job in sort of enforcing the emotion, or reinforcing the emotional moments, but the score managed to really sneak itself out as well, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a pretty sneaky, sort of elegant way of using the score. And like, I know that other films have done it before, but I just thought I know, like, I've tried to do that with a short film of mine, and it was not easy to pull off that little trick, and it did a number of times. So I think this film shows that John, did we decide how it was pronounced? Krickaduss. I think he's shown a clear level of skill, just like J.C. Chander with the film before. And I am going to look forward to his next film, because I do think that with the right material, it could be something that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to respond to there. Yeah. I've just mostly been thinking about what I was going to say, you know, which is how most conversations go in my mind. I almost don't hear anybody when they talk, you know.
Can I sneak in very briefly? This is going to be a short
ahead.
actor talk. They say that the most important, this is the part where I actually do know a little bit, not a ton, but they often say with acting, like, the best actors are fantastic listeners, and often the easiest way to tell whether you are listening or not is sort of, as you were saying, figuring out whether you're actually genuinely listening to what the person's saying and, like, absorbing the words, or if you're just waiting for your turn to talk, right? And it's like, yeah, that's great. Okay, when do I get to talk? I know that I'm guilty about it, and like I'm supposed to work with actors to sort of be able to see, like, are they actually genuinely absorbing what? Because that's what good actors do, right? And like that's why people like Al Pacino is seen as like one of the quintessential listeners. Like he just seems like to be able to absorb whatever's given to him and really respond to that, right? And you would think that listening is a fairly easy exercise, but like the viewers that we do have, like, go and just have a conversation with someone and see how often your brain naturally wanders to something something more important to yourself, right?
I will. It happens often.
Yeah, and I think you'll be very surprised. And that's one of the things you can actually notice about good actors, is that they, at least on screen, don't do that. Or they listen and they don't sort of,
I don't know, man. What if they're portraying somebody who's like thinking about themselves while they listen to other people? Because then it would be genuine and true. Anyway,
now that they're being difficult.
Point. What was I going to talk about? There's one interesting scene that we haven't mentioned anything about. There's the jazz scene where they go to jazz. They're in jazz club.
Yeah.
And the scene pauses, like everything. They've been doing drugs. They've been doing benzodrines, which are system uppers, basically. Everything's really quick, I guess. Anyway, the whole jazz club stops. It's like time is frozen for everybody else except Ginsburg and Burroughs and Lucian Carr. And then Dan Radcliffe starts walking around and he's like, wow, this is weird. And then Lucian Carr is like, watch this. And he whispers in this black woman's ear, go. And then she starts making out with somebody who's obviously not the guy she came with, right? And I thought it was like an interesting scene because like this is a pastime of the time. This is like jazz as a cultural influence can't be overstated enough during the time. And jazz clubs were the sites of some of the most famous like interactions of the period. In like these people of the Beat generation going to these places, this is big history, you know, culturally. And in literature, it inspires. Jazz really sort of takes the first step in terms of improvisation and rule breaking and that sort of thing that literature then follows in suit. I mean, there's a big debate there, but jazz sort of like takes the cake in the 60s for this first off. Anyway, I thought it was sort of an uncomfortable scene too. So while it's historically accurate, and it has a big deal to do with on the road. There's a lot of talk about jazz clubs and running around in jazz clubs, etc. I thought it was sort of an uncomfortable scene too.
How so?
Well, it's mostly black people in the club, which is, you know, I'm sure is historically accurate until white people started coming in and like sort of patronizing these places and like trying to absorb some of the cool. And I'm not trying to draw lines in the sand or anything like that, but it is something to observe that these guys come from a place of immense privilege and sort of descend into the jazz club. And then he actually physically sort of gives a black person a role to perform, right? He says go, he gives her an order, and then she does this. Like all of these sort of overt features were uncomfortable for me. While at the same time I recognize that this was a social milieu and this is what happened. I don't know. What did you think of that scene?
I hadn't, like, honestly, all this stuff about like sexual orientation, race, gender issues, perhaps I am an issue because of it, but I try and treat everyone kindly, and I don't focus too much on it. Like, I always sort of self-regulate myself, like, am I being kind to someone? Am I judging them because of something? No, I don't think so. Okay, great. Then I go about my day. So, like, when I watch films like this, I don't pay attention to that stuff as much as I probably should. Yeah,
man, like, you could be black right now, and I wouldn't have a clue. You know?
Yeah, anyways. Like, the...
In a minute.
Oh, look at that. Someone that had said in a different review that I was reading said, like, you know, they mentioned the scene. It was like how this is like one of the only times a black person was in the film. I thought, ooh, I hadn't noticed that. And I don't know sort of if that has a particular effect and like if that should be a bigger concern of mine. So, you know, that's something that I'm going to have to sort of think about more, I guess, on my own. But the way that I looked at the scene is I thought it was kind of an interesting sort of way to deal with drug use, right? Because you realize when you get to the end of the moment that it's really just Alan being high, right? And like them cutting their hands and stuff, it doesn't actually happen. It's just Alan experiencing all this stuff, and like the hand holding thing is something that's true, but that's about it. And like, I feel like other people have done that before in terms of like showing like, oh hey, they're just high, but I thought that they did a really sort of kind of a clever way of going from montage of like, this is how Alan's life is, and I also thought that they did kind of a clever thing where like you looked at Alan, you thought he was happy, but like there was just a small moment or some small little color of you like, maybe he looks a little bit unhappy, because this is the part where he starts doing a lot of drugs because his mom gets taken away, right? So it uses all this sort of information of like, like Alan's finally taking drugs, his mom's going away, and it uses that information to sort of trick us into forgetting about the idea that this could possibly be just a drug trip. And so that's the thing that my mind was on at the moment. And when I was watching that film, I was like, okay, that's kind of a clever way of like sort of like what magicians do. It's sort of like distraction, like the element of distraction. It has like, look at my waving hand over here so that I can do something neat over here, right? So that's what I thought of that scene. I didn't necessarily see any of the sort of racial connotations or anything.
Well, I mean, there's sort of not racial connotations. There's racial denotations there, which is what I was bringing up. Which
well,
is like,
I'm not smart enough to know the difference.
If the film,
no,
I don't know.
Like,
if the film,
tell me the difference between connotations and denotations, because I'm okay with being kind of dumb.
I'm just trying to think of an example word. Anyway, to denote something means like materially it is there. When I say cup, it refers to cup, like a thing in the world sort of thing. Okay. And then if I say, pass me the cup, or like, I don't know, or a rock. Okay, here, pass me the rock. That's a basketball, right? Rock in this sense is connoting basketball. That's sort of a stretch. Anyway, that's like that's actually not metonymy. That's metaphor, right? Anyway, but connote means like if I say like a pine tree as a symbol, it has many different sort of implications culturally right now than it did 20 years ago. Pine trees are used in advertising and marketing. So like if I call somebody a tree hugger, it
has
a lot
connotations,
right? Anyway, but if it would denote actually somebody hugging a tree, a literal tree. But anyway, there's your example. I was trying to think of something. Okay. Should have a ready one for that. Anyway.
Racial denotations. Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to know what you thought of that, because to me it seemed like he's giving her a command, and she's fulfilling it, and it's like they are making the world go, when in fact it's actually the opposite in terms of
here's a question
of cultural ideals and the artistic experimentation and form and that sort of thing that jazz was transmitting through literature, and that these guys were descending into from places of privilege to sort of like absorb and turn into their writing, and sort of cannibalize a little bit. Anyway, and at the same time, there's the whole symbology of them becoming brothers in this moment. So it's actually quite a significant moment in their intimate history and that sort of. Sorry, something just rolled down the hallway that sounded weird. Anyway, I just wanted to hear what you thought about that.
Yeah, so I don't have anything of particularly insightful
anyway,
information.
I guess my issue was I didn't know what side the film stood on. If it was, I don't think it was trying to critique the social climate or like the actions of these people or anything like that. I don't think it had that extra critical brain or the evil eye sort of fixed on them in that moment. I think it was just sort of like romanticizing their window onto the world, that the new art movement that they were generating and inspiring each other towards was enabling them to do for the world and through the world and that sort of thing. So it seemed to me a little like opportunistic and not reflective when it could have been about the social conditions of the period. Anyway, there you go. I just thought that.
Yeah.
That's a scene that was cool, and we didn't talk about it yet.
Yeah, Yeah.
What about Tobias Funke as Daniel Radcliffe's dad?
I thought that was interesting.
He's a good actor, man. I should find out his name for real, because I like him. Yeah. He plays such a buffoon, a lovable buffoon in Arrested Development, and here I actually took him seriously, and I saw that he was emotionally sort of grounded in his mannerisms and that sort of thing. I thought that was impressive.
Interesting. I think
moment before I give it to you is that when it shows Dan Radcliffe in his apartment with his dad, at the beginning, he says, "Any mail for me?" And I immediately thought of Harry Potter.
Oh God, yeah.
And he's like, "No, I don't think so." And I was like, I had to pause it and say, "Harry Potter,"
Yeah, just like waiting for the owls.
Yeah.
There was a particular sort of overarching point that I wanted to discuss, but it's evading me now. It's been a little bit elusive. I'm
sort of sweating to death here, so I don't know if the internet wants to keep seeing me do that. I might have to go and get some fresh air.
No. I think at this point I think that we've had a pretty good discussion. But I don't know. I think we've had a pretty good discussion. I think the film at least made us think, which is good. And I feel a little bit smarter, or at least a little more cultured, having to sort of think about this film a little bit. But I don't have any sort of lasting thoughts on the film at this point, and if you don't, I think we can just wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm just like picking and choosing scenes that were interesting to me because thematically, I don't want to get into it anymore. You know.
Yeah. No, I think we've talked about it enough. In that case, again, this is an episode of QQ with Second Perspective. I'm Paul Weston. That's Torin McLaughlin, and we'll see you soon. Take care, guys.
Goodbye.